Black Lives Matter under more scrutiny over how it's spending donors' money, as a new report claims Black Lives Matter leaders used $6 million in donations to buy a massive, beautiful California mansion. Fox News contributor and civil rights attorney Leo Terrell joins us right now from Los Angeles. Leo, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing okay, but I'm scratching my head. You know, after the summer of 2020, we'd heard that Black Lives Matter took in, I think, $90 million, and we wondered what they were going to spend the money on. Now we know they spent $6 million on a mansion for themselves.
Yes, Steve, living like the rich and famous. You know, Steve, I'll be very honest with you. $90 million. They basically use black Americans for profit. Steve, ever since the George Floyd death, Black Lives Matter has profited from the George Floyd death. What have they done for the black community? Where are the community centers? Where is the improvement in education? They use this money for personal gain, and you look at that house does not help black Americans. It is basically blood money, Steve, and it's sickening and it's embarrassing. Black people were exploited. Black Americans were exploited by Black Lives Matter for the personal gain of a few.
Well, take us back, Leo. How did they wind up getting these millions and millions of dollars? I know big corporations gave millions of dollars. Why?
Oh, why? It is the classic shakedown. Steve, everyone remembers the George Floyd death, a horrific murder.
Yep.
Let's be very clear. Black Lives Matter exploited that. Black Lives Matter, the NBA, all these major corporations, they wanted to be on the so-called right side of justice. They were on the wrong side, because what have Black Lives Matter, what have these social groups done other than exploit, shook down corporations for personal gain, Steve? The black community has not benefited from the $90 million. There's a state investigation into Black Lives Matter in California. That beautiful home does not benefit black Americans. It doesn't benefit Americans at all.
Right. Well, I understand there's a federal investigation as well. I think I read this morning somewhere. So is there a possibility these three women right here hosting each other, I think they were all involved in this particular mansion. What sort of peril are they in? Because when you give money to a charity, it's not supposed to buy somebody a mansion.
You're absolutely right. The question is, will this administration, will this left-wing Democratic administration in Washington or this deep blue state in California take any action? I want to look the camera right in the eye and tell everyone in this country, name me one thing Black Lives Matter has done to benefit black Americans in this country. I'm waiting. And they had $90 million, Steve. So I'm looking forward to an investigation. Hopefully, in this administration, it probably won't happen, but I'm looking for something tangible that Black Lives Matter has done for black Americans with all that money.
Well, they did buy a mansion. Let's see what happens next. Leo, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
Chapter 14, Organizing a Race for Action. Just as it is in the case of Africa and black people everywhere, the central problem of over 30 million blacks in the United States is unity. Nothing will ever be achieved by such a minority group in white America, nothing that leads to real adjustment for progress until a powerful unity movement among blacks develop throughout the United States. This must be done to achieve full recognition, even as men and women, not to mention full citizenship. As a larger and larger measure of nationwide unity is achieved, the next two steps should be in the direction of charting a practical line of advance and of action. Once the courses of action are carefully and sensibly planned, the picture is several thousand black organizations, each independent and vying for leadership. It's substantially the same picture of fragmentation and disunity in Africa that led to the downfall of the whole race. Still doing it. We still doing it. We have also seen that even in earliest times, very often, all that was involved was that somebody wanted to be the head, was not getting there fast enough, and therefore organized his own little state, right? Most of them perished, picked off one by one. the same thing will happen to any black organizations standing alone that disturb the white mind. The obstacles to unity are so great that the outlook is both discouraging and frightening to all but the strong with the will to both survive and overcome. The very first major obstacle to be overcame involves a mental revolution out of which Black America faces up to the stark reality that white America as a whole is its enemy, that blacks will be recognized only in a subordinate role, and that the scattering of black office holders, high and low, really means nothing to the race as a whole. That there are actually two sets of laws as administered, one for the whites and one for the blacks, just as there were two sets of wages and prices. And finally, that the blacks' loyalty and devotion to whites, in spite of all they have done and still do against them, mystifies the whites themselves and confirms anew their belief that such humble dog attitudes indicate inferiority independently of everything else. Until Black Americans are quite clear in their own minds about their real solution in this country, all talk about unity and achieving equal justice will be just that. Useless talk. Shout out to all the talkers, right? But with a clear understanding of reality, the specific studies and planning for a broad program for securing racial unity and progress can begin. No one would propose that 30 million blacks be brought under a single umbrella of leadership, nor is that necessary. But an organized national conference should develop a program or a code designed to form hundreds of organizations into one vast national body of millions, with each society carrying on its own functions as before, except in matters concerning the whole race, or organized by families and individuals, community by community, and state by state. Where the matter concerns the whole race, affiliated groups would speak in one voice through the overall organization of the race. But since the overall race organization will be directly involved in promoting definite action programs on all fronts, the members of all affiliated programs will also be members of the overall race organization. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. Joseph Ward here. Continuing my reading of Chancellor Williams's awesome book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Chapter 14, Organizing a Race for Action. I mean, this is one of our age-old dilemmas, our age-old problems. Black people can't get together. Black people can't unite. Black people can't work together because there's always somebody with some ulterior motives. You know, they want that white proximity. They want that white love. They want that white fame. They want that white money. They want anything that's related to whiteness. Because over here, on this unity side, we got to work. We got work to do. We got real work to do. Like everybody, men, women, and children got to roll up our sleeves, put some elbow grease in and build. But on this side, I could really just sell out everybody else, get this white money, get these white pats on my head, and be cool, a la BLM. Right, because we're talking about in this chapter, we're talking about the lack of unity, but also the lack of integrity of a lot of black leaders. And black leaders from times immemorial to now, there have always been a group of black leaders that lacked integrity and were always willing to sell out their race, either for themselves or for the white man. But in my opinion, it's all for the white man, because if you're selling out your race, you're helping push the system of white supremacy forward, and you're helping to knock your people back, right? So all in all, it's still you being a proponent for white supremacy. We don't want to get along. Let's not even lie. The masses of Black America don't want to get along because it's too much work. It's too hard. And you actually got to fix your damn self. Yeah, you actually have to fix your problems that you have in your individual life. And you have to make yourself a better person if we actually want real Black unity. And you actually have to be better. And you actually have to work. And People don't want to do that because it's easier to expect somebody else to do it for you, because that's easy. And it's easier to find a comfortable place within a system of white supremacy. But it's hard damn work out there in the field, like the difference between the field Negroes and the house Negroes. It's hard work in that field. It's easier in that house. You got to get out and you got to work. We have to build this from the ground up. And one thing I really like about this chapter is some of the questions that's asked, and because it's gonna spark more conversation. We're gonna get into it, but I'm picking up. Let me get back into the reading. Picking back up on page 342, the last paragraph of 342. So the separative movements of whites gave Negro integrationalists another shock, showing them how utterly dependent they had been on white enterprise for just everything, even in all black neighborhoods before the whites left their own exclusive section. Listen to this, right? Listen to this. But the shock did not affect their dependent mentality. In an all black community of 100,000 people, there were only 3 black owned grocery stores, and very small ones at that, compared to 75 white operated stores. In a black neighborhood of 100,000 black people, 3 small black owned grocery stores, 75 white operated stores. Not a single black owned hardware store, but 7 white, or laundry, 15 white owned laundromats. And you know, it goes on and on and on. So in the black neighborhood of 100,000, we are the minority when it comes to ownership, because we don't want it. That's the lack of will. That's nothing else. That's not white folk. That's a lack of will. In a city of nearly 1 million blacks, there's not a single black owned department store or any other important enterprise. We have left it all to the whites, just as though they alone can create jobs and job opportunities. The perpetual hat-in-hand cry of poverty must end. I'm gonna read that again. The perpetual hat-in-hand cry of poverty must end. What we have too much of is the poverty of spirit, nor will the lack of finance alibi stand, for in spite of our lower incomes, we waste millions in luxuries. What we lack is the chain store vision and enterprising spirit that organizes groups fully able to launch large-scale community financed undertakings, right? The white withdrawal created citywide black communities. Most of the first-class services went to the suburbs. The blacks must now fill the gaps on all fronts, must prove their worth. The time for big talking is over. The time for big action is here. That is why a nationwide movement for unity and one vast organization of millions is the road to constructive action through the various black communities of the country. It's going to take intentional action. We're not just going to unite just like automatically one day we just wake up, oh my God, we are one. No, we have to actually work on a daily basis to rebuild the relationship of Black America, to rebuild the relationship between Black men and Black women, to rebuild the relationship between the elders and the youngsters, to rebuild the relationship between the parents and the children, to rebuild the relationship all overall. The relationships in Black America reflect the relationships of the African diaspora from times immemorial to now, fractured. Fractured. At some point, we're going to have to get over ourselves as individuals. Stop crying about racism if we're not willing to do no real work to get the hell up out this bullshit system. Organizing the race for action must include a carefully developed plan for trapping and drawing on some unused and rejected sources of strength. These are our prisoners and former prisoners. For among the many problems which the blacks themselves must solve is crime, and primarily because all crimes committed by blacks are against blacks, not whites. And I'm not going to say all crimes, but the majority of crimes committed by blacks are by blacks. On to blacks. We are the most violent against ourselves. It doesn't, reality, stark reality. the number of black people killed by police officers versus the number of black people killed by other black people, it doesn't come, it's not even close. Black people kill tons more black people than police kill. But it's high time we get off our ass and get our ass off our shoulders and stop wanting to be lied to. Yes, white supremacy is the problem. I'm not saying the police are not the problem. The police are a problem, but we are on autopilot killing ourselves. And since we are on autopilot, they don't have to do it. And watch, I'm going to read later in this book, Chancellor Williams is going to say the same thing. There must be some program of action in sheer self-defense. Both crime and the fears for safety it breeds will begin to disappear in the black community only when some such programs for unity, for opportunities, and public education as outlined in this work gets underway. These offenders do not know what they are enlisted in the white man's army to slowly destroy the race. The war takes many unsuspected forms, including the big and increasingly widespread use of narcotics among blacks, and an unarmed surrounding suburbia trained by sportsmen, gun, and target clubs, nationwide task force specially trained for inner city operations. The list goes on and on. The community must be made safe for people to live and work there happily and without fears for themselves or their children. Therefore, the blacks themselves must have a program. Here is where community control, about which we hear so much, should begin. The first anti-crime steps might be widespread information, which is education about the true meaning of blacks, crime almost exclusively against blacks, and secondly, the community development plans that are designed to create more opportunities for all. We got to love ourselves, truly love ourselves, not just loving ourselves when things are going right. We got to love ourselves enough to preserve the lives of each other, right? There are other possible programs that could radically reduce crime programs short of the final step. For if all else fails, each community should open an all-out war along lines determined by the community. No such fair course will be necessary, however, if the black community becomes a truly functioning community, in fact. For then there would be so much work to be done in an overall race movement that the so-called criminal in jail or out will have a society not only to return to, but one that welcomes him warmly and needs him or her urgently. So we're talking about using the resources that we have. And then further, we're going to get into the rehabilitation of people, right? But using the resources that we have, unfortunately, we have to use the resources that we have. But in order to best use the resources that we have to first have some kind of functioning unit, some kind of codified functioning unit, society that we can bring these criminals. If we're going to use criminals, how are we going to use the criminals if we don't have no organization? Things are going to go crazy. So I hear what he's saying. But he's also going to hit on the community that the criminals come back into have to be conducive for their well-being, have to be conducive for them getting better if we're going to actually use them in a proper and productive way. Right? So he also says, you can never reform those who have never been allowed to be formed. You can never reform those who have never been allowed to be formed. That's deep, right? Because we're talking about real community, real neighborhoods, real societies. You can never reform those who have never been allowed to be formed. You're always going to have problems. You're always going to think this way. So at some point, we have to give room for a formation to happen, for some kind of formation of the brain, some kind of fundamental formation of the brain to happen. Fundamental formation of the people to happen so we can operate differently, operate in a healthy manner, But that's real. You can never reform those who have never been allowed to be formed. I've gone into some details in both outlining the most disturbing spots cast by the dark shadows of history and also trying to pinpoint what the possible signs of promise are. For the black world, history's watchmen could see no sign of promise, no sign of hope outside of a position of strength, which unity alone can provide. But there will never be real unity without a plan and a code, and a program with a code to sustain it. Petty power struggles, bickering, attacking each other are all signs of a death wish as a race. Which way then will you still enshackle blacks, right? 6,000 years of their history has answered. Unite or perish. Work together, black people, or die together. The tragedy that bloodied the pages in every period of their history because of disunity should be warning enough for the blacks of Africa, the Caribbeans, and elsewhere. But being the one people who are generally ignorant of their history, it may well be that many will not see unity as a question of life or death. However, there has been so much history during the time of those now living that the precarious situation of the black race should be obvious to us all. Only a largely united people can successfully confront oppressors and without praying on bending knees or even pleading, secure the removal of all shackling chains. The choices between unity of action and calm, careful thinking and planning the courses of action through one vast organizing of millions, either this or ultimate damnation. If the race is incapable of unity, it is incapable of survival as a free and equal people and would deserve all the inequities imposed upon it, for it will have proved beyond all question that it is indeed unfit to survive as a people free and equal in every respect whatsoever with the other peoples of the earth. I'm gonna read that again just to let it stick. I want it to sting, right? Because I want you to think. If the race is incapable of unity, it is incapable of survival as a free and equal people and would deserve all the inequities imposed upon it, for it will have proved beyond all question that it is indeed unfit to survive as a people free and equal in every respect whatsoever with the other peoples of earth. So we cannot prove to unite and work and provide on our own and operate on our own. We will always need another people to rule over us, to guide us. So we will always be oppressed. We will always be under the thumb of some group. And as of right now, that is white supremacy. Get up, get out, and get something. What is proposed here is a moratorium on futile rhetoric and the beginning of real racial unity through an action program never attempted before. Therefore, black leadership obstacles will still be with us, and for the same ancient reasons. A mass organization expressly planned to enrich the lives of the people on all fronts and directly through the people's own ownership of and profit sharing in all economic enterprises. This will be too much for many leaders to adopt, except in principle. And any such all-Africa race movement in the United States will certainly be bitterly opposed by all Negro integrationalists because no whites will be in it. This is in their skewed minds means black separatism because, you know, that's one of the pitfalls or the downfalls when it comes to black people unifying is the so-called leaders. The so-called leadership and their love affair with the oppressors. The so-called leadership are the ones who are constantly showing and proving that they themselves exclusively, but also the masses, that we are not capable of leading ourselves, of taking care of ourselves. Most of the African people in the world are incapable of taking care of ourselves, and that's a problem. We need white people for our basic survival. Black separatists, who are they? Who is y'all, black separatists? Who is y'all? The simple truth is that the African people in the United States and throughout the world are not and never have been separatists. In fact, perhaps this has been their weakness. Dun, dun, dun. They have never really hated the whites, and they do not really hate whites now. What is taken for hatred when applied to blacks is their reaction against being hated, rejected, and oppressed. Come on, somebody. Black people mad because white people don't love them. And the thinking whites know this very well. When they cry racism in reverse, or reverse discrimination, or reverse segregation, they are saying, in effect, that only we whites may be racist. Only we whites may discriminate or segregate, but not you blacks. All white organizations that exclude blacks everywhere are normal and proper for the white perspective, but an all black organization excluding whites. Perish the thought. Whites flee en masse from cities throughout the nation to avoid integrated schools and fair housing laws. These are the real separatists, not the blacks who never fled from the whites at all. Yet the blacks who said, let them go. Let us not pursue them. Let us stay where we are, stand on our own feet as men and women, and begin to build and improve our own schools and communities. These, not the whites, are denounced as separatists, not black nationalists. And you can throw the BLM people in there too, right? Your Al Sharptons and your Pastor Jamal Bryants and your Jasmine Crockett's and your Ben Crumps and all your your so-called black leaders who want us to be, who want our noses so far up the Democratic booty hole is crazy. But they try to sell it to us as if they are not the oppressors. Right wing, left wing. The bird has two wings. The question which blacks must answer and act on and remain forever exactly where they are is, how can a minority group in a situation distinctly different from that of any other minority successfully live and develop happily in an overwhelmingly white society? How can a minority group in a situation distinctly different from that of any other minority group, because not many other groups of black people are behind enemy lines the way we are, successfully live and develop happily in an overwhelmingly white society? This is the question that faces us squarely in the critical times at the crossroads. And the decision must be taken as a race, and by the race rather than self-appointed leaders. F you leaders, sit y'all asses down. Right? But the problem is we have failed leadership and failed followership. The followers are just as damn dumb and crazy as the leaders. All of our minds have been warped. And those who say, no, don't do that crazy stuff, it's not working, stop following them people. They don't really mess with you like that. They're setting you up for failure. We are the ones who crazy. I can't tell you how many times I tell black people to think. Just think politically, just think critically, and research both parties. Oh, you must be a Republican. Oh, you must love Trump. Check out some of the comments on this channel of some of the political videos we've done. If you're a black person and you are not marching to the Democratic drum, you must support white supremacy. And they don't even understand how much they uphold and support white supremacy. Your noses are so far up white supremacists, but you can't even smell that they shitting on you, which is a problem. The term crossroads here must be taken more seriously than a mere metaphor. For a people may reach that intersection in life where the routes cross, leading in different directions. We only know the road over which we have just come. So at the crossroads, we must pause, uncertain. Which way do we go now? Which way should we go? The numerous movements led by charismatic leaders with catchy slogans to shout are roads many will take. Umar Johnson. The biggest crowd drawing route will always be baited with some kind of religion led by some prophet or mystic. For religion, any kind of religion, has been the means by which hope has maintained a people without any basis for hope. And the search for a real leader has always been so desperate that people flock to this or that promoters movement, hoping that a true leader has been found at last. Black Lives Matter, Umar Johnson. $60 million that Black Lives Matter collected off the backs of the death of black males. Umar Johnson told y'all that you ain't black if you don't support his school. Neither tree bears any fruit, but yet people will still support him. Horrible leaders, horrible followers. Black people don't want to be united, really. If I know somebody is scamming me and I'm going to continuously support them and follow them and champion their name, and I know they're scamming me, my community, the tree bears no fruit, but we're going to keep rubbing the tree and loving the tree. We don't really want unity. We have to stop lying about it. We don't want unity. It sounds good. It sounds good. We don't know what else to say because we're not going to come out and say, we love white supremacy. We love it. But we're going to, that's what we want to say, but we're not going to come out and say it because we know how damaging that could be. So we're just going to pretend like we're against it while all the actions that we take are supporting it. All right. The personal wealth amassed by these leaders is a matter of pride for many of their followers. To the poor and ignorant who are being fleeced, even the Paladino mansion with colorfully uniformed servants reflect the power and glory of their leader. Criticism is silence, for these leaders are shrewd, natural psychologists. They know exactly what appeals to the deprived masses, what will give them a feeling of being somebody and uplifted. Thousands will continue to be exploited by the smarter ones who know all the tricks that stir the emotion and empty pocketbooks. And apparently these countless thousands of faithful followers like it, right? They like to be scammed. Black people, especially black conscious people, love to be scammed. There are several big organizations, each concerned with different aspects of the racial situation, which carry on successful and much needed work in their respective fields. Some were on the battlefront for the race when no one else was there. Without them, the situation of blacks in America would be far worse than it is. If we henceforth advance at all, no matter in what direction or how different, it would be from the foundations of the best of these organizations have already laid. How long the black race will stand at the crossroads, uncertain what to do, confused, and in fact, actually afraid. How long? Only future history will tell. But one thing is certain, there is a way out. There is an open, untried road. The untried road to actual unity and actual improvement of the lives of the black masses everywhere is exactly what is proposed in these pages, proposed in clear, concrete, and specific terms. Good old elbow grease, rolling up your sleeves, working together. Absent of the white man, working together absent of the white man. Can you do that, Negro? Can you do that? Can you even envision yourself in a world where white men and white women and white people don't dominate every aspect of your life? Can you even imagine that? Shout out to Professor Carl Tone Jones for his documentary, The Independent Black, the Independence Day Project, where the question was, what does an independent black community look like free of white supremacy, right? Since by the actual nature of things, racism will never be wished away. The human race could escape the predicted general war between races and reach a real state of civilization at last through a symbiotic society. There will be no pretense of love and brotherhood, which did not exist in fact. The fierce and increasing battles of the whites against integration illustrate the point most clearly. And this is why people of the African race will have to accept the harsh fact that they are rejected by the whites. back up and begin to reorganize for a position of power that commands respect, not love, and one that will therefore bring about the kind of cooperation and opportunities that eventuate in real equality and equal justice. Equality simply means the removal of every barrier that prevents a human being from realizing his fullest potential, right? To achieve the goal of survival and self-action, progress, the blacks do not have to withdraw anywhere to form a separatist society, for the whites themselves have created an even more completely black separatist society in their mad flights to the suburbs. Here, we have all that is meant by symbiosis before our very eyes, living, concrete, and almost complete. For having thus withdrawn to make their own separatist community more complete, the whites must not be allowed to perpetuate the lower status of blacks by also controlling and dominating the black community from which they fled. But they do, and we still allow them to. The communities that they flee from, they still control, because the blacks, oh yeah, we forgot. Oh yeah, we could do it ourselves. Damn, we forgot. We forgot, black people here in America, we forgot that we could actually control our own communities. We control our own communities. But this will mean something far more than the black people's fragmented programs of the 1960s, marching, demonstrations, singing, praying in public squares, shouting protests and slogans, or even the frantic screams of "burn, baby, burn." Self-destroying, uncontrolled emotional outbursts must be checked precisely because they becloud the mind, make you just the easy targets the enemy is waiting for, and thereby prevent the kind of deliberate and rational thinking and planning that can not only defend and advance the lift of the community, but can help civilization itself to survive. Now, it may well be the perspective whites will be quick to see, probably even before blacks, that my reference to them as the traditional enemy of the race is not at all a call for increased hatred, tensions, and endless conflicts between the races. For those whites who have read even the high points of the record presented in this work will see with no trouble at all that I have singled out the exact roots to the kind of organized power and influence which will engage a subordinated people in self-improving activities that demonstrate visibly the equality as men and women throughout the world. Because we have to remember, we are at war, and we are also in a position where our manhood and femininity is not even recognized. We are boys and girls to them. You have to have power to even be recognized as a man and or a woman. So we are boys and girls to them, children to them, the teenagers of this world. Black Americans are the teenagers of this world, and the world sees us as such because we behave as such. The prospective whites will also see quickly enough that reference to them as enemies of their race would be a threat to their absolute supremacy, only if it causes the blacks to wake up, begin to realize how fragile is the basis for their present faith in the ultimate justice of the white man, and begin to unite to plan a different course, something they have never done before. Above all, they can see the great difference between the powerful force of a massive body organized on such a scale that will actually represent the voice and will of blacks in America, and the relative powerlessness of individual organizations and black capitalist groups, important and desirable as each may be in itself. For they know that both the real economic and political power in the United States is silently exercised by the thoroughly organized giant corporations, which, supported and financed by a tax-paying public with government grants and subsidies, operate realistic socialism at the top. How was all this power achieved? This is the important question here. Study their steps to unity and be amazed, because no matter how diverse and competitive the giant corporations were, they formed step by step the most thoroughgoing system of overall unity in the world. At the summit of world corporate power, it is neither private nor free enterprise. Small business enterprises are indeed private, but they are free only in imagination. They are the dependent satellites of the all-powerful interlocking corporations and conglomerates. This quiet capitalistic socialism is interesting It's interesting to study and compare with the openly proclaimed Marxist or state socialism. If we ignore the ideological principles and slogans that influence the masses, all appear as actually anti-people and therefore anti-civilization. Now, he talked about it last chapter and goes into it more in this chapter about the idea of capitalism and or communism being good for black people, being something that black people throughout the world should adopt. When his argument is both systems create separate the people. They separate the rich and the poor because both systems have to have people on top and they have to have a mass of poor on the bottom. A minority of rich on the top and a mass of poor on the bottom. Both socialism and capitalism both do that, right? For the blacks, who are the most victimized everywhere, their own situation can be radically changed in a program that regards money only as a means by which they can do things that must be done through cooperation. For the new kind of new cooperative organization we have been discussing will be different from those now existing in fundamental aims and objectives. The concept here is cooperation as the humane law of life, total and actual unity, brotherhood, and sisterhood throughout the organization, and not just economic cooperatives such as stores, markets, housing, farms, etc. Important as these will be, and we say this united movement toward a more humane economic system in the midst of a dog-eat-dog, money-man cooperative society will be a movement in the direction of real civilization. The challenging question is whether blacks of the 20th century can recover enough of the vision, strength, and the will of their forefathers who built the Great Pyramids to undertake the task of this present. Do we have that will? No, we don't. The majority of us don't have that will because remember, you can't reform something that has not been formed. Most of us have not been formed in the sense of liberation and seeing ourselves free of the system of white supremacy. Most of us and our mindsets, our mentalities, our behavior, our lives, everything is set up to be a servant to the system of white supremacy. The liberation of our minds. This task is number one. It will not be easy. It will not be easily achieved by a single generation. The reasons have already been rather clearly set forth. The present day confused outlook of the African people is the result of centuries of Caucasian acculturation and a quite natural process wherever one people come under the economic, political, and social domination of another people. The ideologies and value system of the oppressors quite unconsciously become those of the oppressed, even when the result is demonstratively against themselves. But all other oppressed peoples, whether Indian, Chinese, or Japanese, were able to hold on doggedly to their own racial pride and cultural heritage as the last resource for survival as a people. Unlike the blacks, though, they were never completely cut off from this sustaining lifeline of every people. In order to clear the way some of the confusing cobwebs from our minds, we must be helped by rethinking through the following propositions. And there are like 9 of these propositions. And these propositions are lengthy. I'm not going to read all of the propositions, but I will give you a bit of each proposition. So let me get back up to the first. So number 1 is Black Americans en masse are not going to immigrate to Africa or anywhere else. This is a fact equally true of all large Black populations elsewhere outside of America. The real spirit of racial identity in the land of our forefathers and a real Pan-Africanism will emerge only in those Black population areas which, through their own unified development programs, have reached a level of strength that enables them to maintain a permanent system of exchange in visits, goods, and services with the motherland and other areas. So that one was a short one. So number 2, nobody is going to destroy the American system, and nobody is going to destroy either capitalism or communism. There will be no attempt here to go into detailed analysis to demonstrate whether neither capitalism nor communism can be acceptable wholly by the African people. Draw on any beneficial elements of each. Yes. Accept either one as our total system? No. Those who have been so brainwashed into ideological blindness and they cannot see that the actual political, economic, and social structures of capitalism and communism are substantially the same Same upper ruling classes, same elite classes, and the same controlled and exploited masses. Those unable to see this operating over the world before their very eyes will, of course, be unable to see what is presented here, because they are confused about the system of white supremacy. Since most blacks live within what is essentially a capitalist system, when they face up to the fact that neither they nor another shouting group are going to destroy the system, that they will be in a position to plan how to deal with the system. They not only need not wholly accept it, but they should reject black capitalism as a solution to the economic bondage problems of the masses. For it must certainly be clear by now that my whole focus is on a system that directly benefits the people lower down, the great common people, and not just the further enrichment of blacks who are already well off and far ahead. Number 4, the white man as an enemy of blacks will become less and less a fact, and his hostile, contemptuous attitude will change to more and more respect if and when the race begins to move forward on 3 fronts. The first is the kind of massive organization, the very existence of which means the presence of an organized power to be reckoned with. The second is a nationwide economic development program promoted by the Unified Race Organization as enterprises of a united people, as distinguished from those of private individuals and corporations. The third is political action. There's no question about better race relations developing as more and more members of the race registered to vote, and the number of black elected officials to office increases. The recent notable increase in the number of black elected officials in the United States, be it remembered, resulted almost entirely from the existence of predominantly black communities after the whites had withdrawn to the suburbs, right? So that was all still a part of number 4. Number 4 is pretty long, but you can read it for yourself when you get the book, the rest of it. Number 5, the 5th barrier to the liberation of our minds would have been set forth first if we were proceeding in order of importance or difficulty, for it is perhaps the most tragic and formidable. That mental blockage of total liberation developed from the way religion has been used to capture, enslave, and exploit the black people of the world for over 1,000 years. For the African people are and always have been a very religious and highly spiritual people, but we are also a religiously gullible people, believing that the religion of the foreigners and their belief in the one supreme God, though called by different names, were essentially the same as our own, and this was right. What the blacks did not know, however, was that while both Christianity and Islam were in themselves great and acceptable faiths, they were being used by men whose main purposes were conquest and enslavement in pursuit of economic and political power. Number 6, to escape the last form of our mental house of bondage, we must see this color crazy world in a clear perspective, for color crazy it is. We should begin by drawing a vast African circle of honor around all those millions of Africans of mixed blood, often referred to as mulattoes, who from the earliest times to the present have stood steadfast and loyally identified with the race of their originally black mothers. He's not talking about mulattoes as a whole. He's talking about the mulattoes who chose to identify with their blackness. They deserve special honor exactly because they did not have to do so when the amalgamation of the white races spread over Egypt and the Arabic world. They had compelling reasons for not being identified with black-skinned Africans, for they were classified as white and therefore not subject to enslavement. So they had all the reasons to identify with their whiteness and chose to identify with their blackness. Number 7. In view of the facts already set forth, it should be surprising why so many American Negroes are identifying themselves the Arabic middle class, or Asia rather than Africa. The fact that in the United States, all Africans and persons with any discernible African blood were illegally classified as Negroes made a most important difference and contrasted sharply in other parts of the world where mulattoes are either classified as white or given the legal status of a separate ethnic group with a privileged status above those with dark or black complexion. Even mulattoes arriving from some of the West Indian islands are often shocked to find the American practice of classifying all of them as Negroes. They resent it. And many will not live in the United States for this reason. By contrast, the anti-black mulattoes in the United States, while resenting the indiscriminate grouping, also have accepted both Negro and colored proper names. So he's saying that's another issue. And one of the other issues is, let me see. Oh, that was the last one. That was the last one. So those are 8 of the issues. Oh, excuse me, that was number 7. So number 8 is, finally, another major obstacle to unity and progress that is hardly ever openly discussed must not only be discussed but attacked in a nationwide program in the home. Obviously, only a massive nationwide organization can deal successfully with any of our massive problems. This one concerns an inheritance from slavery. It is the attitude of indifference and disrespect of blacks toward blacks. To the average black, another black is not as important as anyone of another race. Therefore, black clerks or salespersons will serve whites more quickly and politely than they will serve members of their own race. This evil spirit from slavery pervades all classes, whether lawyers, carpenters, doctors, painters, nurses, shop owners, school heads, teachers, repairmen, garbage and trash men, paper hangers, taxi drivers, movers and haulers, employees in homes, etc. Right? The only thing you can count on being first class are the charges, which are often higher than what the whites pay for the services these same blacks give at the highest level of their competence. The exceptions to this general rule are not enough to affect such a damaging situation. This is why, in proposing specific steps in organizing a whole people, emphasis in place on training at the very outset for all persons involved directly in the work. For the great task of developing real mutual respect must be undertaken by people who have it themselves. We are no longer interested in the often hypocritical rhetoric of brothers and sisters. Too often, brothers and sisters are mouthed by some with the biggest afro bush while mugging, graping, and killing the same brothers and sisters. You can look black, smell black, feel black, talk black, walk black, have all type of African pictures in your house, smell like shea butter, wear nothing but dashikis, and you know, all that stuff, and still be a proponent of the system of white supremacy. We see it. We see it of the fake leaders in the black community. Unity, real unity, take real work. Out of this general attitude, which serves the white supremacy position so well, develops an indifference to high standards of excellence in all black situations. The idea that efficiency and expertise are unnecessary in all black situations, and that strict business methods in the areas of auditing, accounting, and strict financial procedures in the collection, deposit, and management of other people's money. These safeguards are taught by many to have no place in the black community. Here we have a contradictory mental twist among blacks. For while distrust of one another is characteristic when it comes to the thousands of do-good organizations into which we pour millions of dollars, the idea is that one should trust the brothers and sisters who collect, hold, and control the people's money. Re-education will be required for the 2 mandatory changes in attitude, one toward each other in terms of mutual respect, and the other in change of attitude about efficiency, expertise, and business management and financial responsibility and administration. Unless we begin to develop and expand these first, a great survival movement will fail just as any other noble efforts failed because the rush neglected the necessary foundation. Right. For some reason, black people, we operate all of our businesses, enterprises, institutions like we were trained to work at Popeyes. Like we just show up and don't give a damn. We just at work and we don't give a damn. And we give some of the worst service to each other. But that comes from the way we look at each other. We don't like each other. We black Americans, black people throughout the world, we don't like each other. We don't love each other. We tolerate each other. We tolerate each other because, like Chancellor Williams pointed out, the white people have rejected us. The white people like, nah, we ain't messing with y'all. Like y'all can't like be with us. That's why we don't like y'all. Like we want to separate from y'all. That's why we keep running from y'all. And black people like, no, white people, no, don't run from us. No, white people, no. We love you. We need you. We have to have you in our lives. Come on, white people, don't leave us. And white people keep running from them. The white flight, right? Black people named it white flight. No, white people don't like you. It's called white supremacy. They don't like you and they don't need you. They don't want you around them. And you constantly want to be around them, just like what's happening in Baton Rouge. The white people don't want to be around you. The problem is the black people have to have the white people around because the white people have all the resources. Because unity in the community is just a slogan. It's not something that black people actually want to do because it takes real work to actually be a better person. Because this is going to take black people to be better people. It takes real work to be a better person. It takes real work to be a goddamn adult. It takes real work to be a black person who really gives a shit about yourself and the people around you and actually put your best foot forward every day and not go out the house bullshitting. That's what it takes. So that was chapter 14. Chapter 15. So we're almost at the end of this book. Chapter 15, the shape of things to come. The master plan goes from page 361 to this portion goes from 361 to I guess 370. So for 361 to 370 well, no, it's still the same chapter. It's still the same chapter. From 361 to it's a pretty long chapter. 361 to 382. So not that long. So 361 to 382, the shape of things to come will be our next reading, our next video. Hey, man, black unity. Black unity, man. Come on now. Black unity is something that is either going to happen or it ain't going to happen. We're either going to live together as a united group of people and fight for everything that we want. We have to be everything that we want. We have to fight for it and build it and make it happen. We can either unite as a people, expel all bullshit leaders, get them out of the way, stop following, expel all bullshit leaders and all bullshit followers, unite on some real intentional stuff. We either can do that or we're going to perish together because the system of white supremacy or any other supreme system that happens will not favor us and will keep us on bottom. And we choose to be subordinate. We choose to be oppressed at this point in time in history. Like this video, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. As many people as possible need to see these videos, need to understand what our scholars have written, this important and great information in this book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. The link is in the description for you to get your copy if you don't already have it. If you don't already have your copy, you tripping. Go ahead and get your copy so you can get to reading and then get to applying what you learn. We got to make our lives better. We got to make our lives better. Got to be better people. Got to be better black people. If we're not being better black people, we're wasting our damn time. I'm Joseph Ward. I love you all. Make sure you catch the next video coming up.